What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 3.
Yes, sir.
Wow, we have stayed consistently working on this. I know
That's more consistent than my. Well, never mind. I better not talk about that.
it's tough. It's tough to try to schedule things out and meet, and especially when you start bringing a guest in, which means that today or this episode is our first guest that we have ever had, and Johnny Knowlton from Pampa.
That's right. That's right.
He joined us this afternoon, and we had a great conversation, and I'm stoked for everybody to hear it and stuff. So before we get started, I wanted to make sure that everybody knows where they can find us. We post on SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify. We have our Facebook page, youth pastors or pastors too, on Facebook, and then we have a YouTube channel for updates and stuff, but we're not plugging that one because we don't want you watching it. We want you listening.
True story. Well, I mean, listening is, I listen in the car all the time. And so it's just a matter of plug that podcast in, listen to us for, an hour or so, and, hopefully be encouraged.
And I don't want people to notice that I wear the same kind of shirt, just different colors. Before we recorded earlier, Amanda was like, "Hey, I think you wore that shirt on your first episode." And I was like, "No, that's not true." And I went back, and sure enough, I was wearing the same shirt as the first episode. And I was like, "Oh, I got to change." So...
Well, and that's I catch myself wearing the Austin FC jersey like all the time, and I'm like, "Wait, I wore that last time. I can't wear it again."
Yeah, so that's why we're plugging the podcast. Don't watch if you want to see us talk, you want to see what Johnny Knowlton looks like, then you'll see him. I creeped on his Facebook page, and when he said he was a big dude, he was a big dude.
Yeah. I think the camera didn't do justice to the guy's size, I don't think.
All right, today we are joined with Johnny Knowlton from Pampa, North Texas area. I don't want to give too much because he has a pretty cool story about how he got into ministry. And just before we started, Jeremy and Johnny know the same guy that Jeremy was a youth minister to the guy's daughter, and apparently they are working together. So, Johnny, if you introduce yourself and kind of tell us your backstory and what you're doing now, and just let us get to know you better.
Cool. Yeah. So again, man, I'm the Next Gen and Families pastor up here at Calvary Baptist in Pampa, Texas. My story is kind of one of those Jonah stories, man. I knew when I was 15, I was called to student ministry, and I told God, "Hey, that's really funny. I'm going to be a rock star. I'll be over here." and people laugh about that, but that's legit what I was consumed with. I thought Nashville was in our future. In fact, early on in our marriage, my wife and I had to look at that as a possibility, that possible decision to move out there. And God, in his infinite wisdom, allowed me to run for 20 years, trying to figure things out on my own. And one night, we had moved out to a small East Texas town. My job had taken us out there, and her folks had moved out there, and she'd gone up to help out her dad with the student ministry up there. And she called me and she said, "We need you to come up here." And I said, I don't want to come up there. I've been working in Dallas all day. I made a 2-hour commute every day into Dallas from East Texas. And she said, "No, you don't understand. We don't need you to teach. We need a bouncer. These kids are out of control." And God, in his infinite wisdom, knew that I used to be a bouncer. I used to do concert security. And B, the fastest way to get me to do anything is make my wife feel uncomfortable. And
that's true.
So I ended up there. Within a couple of weeks, me and another guy that was there volunteering, we kind of helped calm the students down. They had two people that were kind of filling the roles of student pastor. One was more the admin side, and one was just straight teaching. So I became a bouncer again on Wednesday nights. And then about a month after that, I got asked if I would step in and help teach Sunday school. And then I got asked if I would help and step in and help on the youth team, planning events.
Yeah.
And then
They set that hook on you.
then we ended up hiring a man who would go on to become my best friend and my mentor in student ministry. And he asked us to stay and help and be that bridge between his era and the one before. And soon after that, our band graduated, and he said, "Hey, I heard you play guitar and can sing and lead worship." I said, yeah, a little bit. And he goes, "Okay, great. You've been promoted. You're now the worship leader for the student ministry." And then it was help fill in on Wednesdays when he had to step out. And so serving with the guy for just over 4 years. In that time, God groomed me and used him to do so on the student ministry side of things. And then also he'd put a worship pastor in place who kind of took me under his wing and was helping me develop in that. And then again, we talk about God and his sovereignty, and more importantly, I think his sense of humor. Both guys resigned within a week of each other.
Oh.
What?
And the senior pastor said, well, you're going to do both roles. He said, I'd like for you to help lead the students moving forward and also fill in the worship side of things in the interim. But I think we need to really talk about your calling. And of course, I said, like my phone plan? And he said, no. Anybody who's been around you and seen you with those students knows that you have a calling in your life to student ministry. When are you going to stop running from it? So I had to have that very real sit down conversation with my wife, who was laughing. And I said, what are you laughing about? Our best friends have just told us that they're leaving. And the senior pastor wants to throw me in there. And she said, I knew when Michael and Christy told us that they were leaving that you were going to be the youth pastor. And I said, did you want to fill me in on this anytime soon? And so, man, I served at that church for 4 years in the student director role. And in those 4 years, in and out of worship leader, I think I was the interim worship leader for like 3 different go-arounds in that time. But we knew we were at winter camp, January 17, and God had just laid something on me in worship that day. And so I texted my wife in the middle of the worship service. I said, hey, when the kids break for free time, you and I need to go for a walk. And she said, okay. So she met me outside the cabin and she said, what's up? And I said, we need to talk. And she goes, about me going into ministry full time. And I just kind of looked at her. I was like, what? And she goes, yeah. She goes, I can tell in your face that God was putting that on your heart. And I said, yeah. She goes, I just been waiting for you to tell me when.
Wow.
So we knew that it was time. And now here's kind of where the funny thing is. I was bivocational. I was working for a major insurance company. And I had been there for just over 15 years at this time. And the great thing was, we knew that was always our safety net. So we came back from winter camp and I sat down with the pastor and chairman of the deacons and just told him, this is where we feel God is calling us to. And at that time we were going through a lot of transition. Senior pastor had been there a little over a year. We had a terrific interim for the 2 years. Prior to that, Richard Taylor from the SBTC, who was again a dear friend and a dear mentor. And I sat down with the pastor and said, this is where we feel we're being called. And he said, that's great. And we'll pray that it can happen here, but we just don't have the numbers. We don't have the funds to justify a full-time position. And so we kind of took that with a grain of salt, but we could kind of see God's hand moving, that the transition plan was in place. Fast forward a month, I get an email from my supervisor saying, you need to be on this call tomorrow afternoon at 2:30. Okay. Me and a couple of the other guys that I worked with, and we were all working in rural territories for this insurance company. Phone call comes in. You have until mid-March to make a decision. Are you going to stay with the company, or are you going to be downsized? In order to stay with the company, you will have to reapply for your job, and there's no telling where you will end up. And so I talked to my wife and I said, that safety net we were counting on is going away.
It's funny how God works on that way.
Oh yeah. And so the day comes where I'm supposed to make the decision, and we've been praying about it, and I'm just torn up over it. And she said, before you get on this call, she goes, I want you to think about this. We've both in agreement that you're being called to full-time ministry. I had already resigned from my church that I was serving at that September because we knew God was trying to move us into that. So she says, you really need to think about the situation. I really honestly feel like you are in that Peter role, standing on the edge of the boat. You've been saying, Lord, if it's you, call me. And he's sitting there going, come on. She goes, so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I will say this, I think the majority of us who are in ministry, if we would learn to listen to our wives, we will understand that their spiritual gifting 9 out of 10 times is discernment.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you this, in every major decision we've ever had to make, if my wife says, I just don't have a peace about it, it's going to go south.
Yeah.
And I've learned that the hard way. And so we said, you know what, we're going to trust that God has something for us, has a church for us. So I told my company I would no longer stay with them. They said, okay, in order to qualify for your severance package, you have to ride it out until July 31st. That's your kickoff date. If you stay that long, your severance package will kick in. So in that time, I had a couple of different offers from churches, and we just couldn't get a peace about any of them. For whatever reason, it just again, her discernment, my discernment.
Yeah.
And that was hard because one of them was from a dear friend of mine. Like, we've been friends for 20 years since college. He's a senior pastor at a church. He wanted me to come in and do a dual role, which I was fully equipped for and prepared for. And I couldn't get a peace about it. And so the day I was supposed to call him and give him, and again, you talk about God's sovereignty. He said, before you tell me anything, I want you to know that God prepared me in my quiet time this morning that you're going to tell me no. And I was amazed. I was like, all right, well, thanks God. That's one less worry I have. And we talked a little more and prayed a lot more. And in that time, we had already had one interview with our current church with Calvary, just via Skype. And so July 31st comes, I get my severance package. I get a phone call the next week. We would like to fly you and your wife up for an interview.
Wow.
Okay, that's great. We are leaving for vacation tomorrow. Okay, no problem. We'll push it back. So they pushed it back. We brought us up, and we knew halfway through the interview this is where we were supposed to be.
No, that's awesome.
God just gave us that peace. And what was cool was just the interaction between us and the senior pastor, us and the search committee members. We could just tell. And so the interview was a Friday night. We were supposed to check out of the hotel at noon, go to Amarillo for our flight back. One of the search committee members said, hey, can we meet for breakfast? And we were just like, okay, that really throws all our plans out the window. So we meet, And after breakfast is over, the senior pastor goes, well, not to tip our hand, but we're going to have the music minister and his wife show you around town and let y'all look for houses.
Wow.
That's good stuff,
So,
man. That's good stuff.
But it's just amazing how God in his sovereignty sets all this up. I've always laughed that my testimony was that of Jonah. And then again, God and his sense of humor, we became Abram and Sarai. And going back to the whole transitioning thing, when we talked with our oldest son, he was 8 at the time. We explained to him that we were going to be leaving the church that we were serving at. And he said, well, where are we going to go? I said, buddy, we don't know right now. We're just trusting God. And 8-year-olds, you know, he said, well, if God says we got to go, we got to go. Like Abram and Sarai. And I'm going, well, hold up. And so my wife and I have always joked that Moses had his burning bush, Balaam had his donkey, we have DJ. So, but man, he moved us up here, and then the whole Abram and Sarai thing came full circle because after I turned 41, 2 months later, my wife said, guess what? We're pregnant. So, oh yeah. So again, God's sense of humor. I keep a platypus on my desk because it's my favorite animal in the world because it is a reminder of God's sense of humor. I have currently, at the age of 43, I have an 8-year-old son, an 11-year-old son. Both are about 7, 11. Both are about to turn 8 and 12.
Yeah.
And we have a 16-month-old little girl. So,
wow.
Diapers.
Oh yeah. And you know, my wife, I was like, well, she can just wear the boys' clothes. She was like, no, she's a girl. And so she does have her share of Astros stuff and Spurs stuff, and she has a Metallica onesie she's running around with. But yeah, she's got the dresses, and she is all girl. She loves bows and sparklies and unicorns, and I was like, well, I'm sure we can find some pink Steelers stuff somewhere, some pink Spurs stuff, but
Steelers. I think the connection's messing up right now. Hang on a second.
You can that would be my old man's fault. When I was a kid, he used to make me watch the old Cowboys Steelers Super Bowls. Yeah, and he was a diehard Cowboys. I mean, I'm not kidding. Kicked me out of the house for Super Bowl 30 when they played in the Super Bowl again. He made me go watch at a friend's house. But I always tell him it was his fault that I'm a Steelers fan because he showed me those defenses of the 70s, and I just fell in love with the team.
No, we won't hold it against you. We won't hold it against you.
We'll pray for you on that one.
Well, listen, you sort of hinted on it a little bit, but we've sort of been talking about what do you do and who do you turn to when there's kind of a crisis situation or maybe you don't know what to do. Just give you kind of a quick scenario, and I'll tell you, it was Jacob's scenario. He was in the middle of the D-Now that he had planned for months and months and months, and he got the call that his mother-in-law was about to pass away, and there was a brief moment where they could kind of all say their goodbyes and be there. And his wife was like, obviously going, but he's like, do I stay at the church or do I go? And so kind of in that idea, that mindset, what do you do? How do you, as a youth pastor, how do you respond? Who do you call on? Do you call on anybody?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been very fortunate with the staff that I serve right now. I have a great relationship with my senior pastor. And our associate pastor and our music minister, the four of us really, not only are we coworkers, are we partners in ministry, but we're friends. And so we have that open type of relationship. I went through something similar a couple of years ago. My dad passed away in June of 19. And in the midst of that and me needing to go down to San Antonio to spend his last couple of weeks with him, this is children's camp, VBS, youth camp. And we are scheduling his arrangements.
Time, right? Yeah.
Right. Oh, we're scheduling his arrangements in between when I'm here. And so that was really hard. For me, like I said, I have the leadership in place, that I know. I hate to say this, but I know some guys just don't have. They don't have
Yeah.
the relationship with their senior pastor, or they don't have the comfort level they feel they can go to him with anything like that.
Mhm.
So number one, I've been very blessed with that. But at the same time, I mentioned my best friend, Michael Tollison is his name, and he's some people that watch this podcast may know the name, may know him. He actually came up here. He and his wife came up here and spent some time with us right in the middle of our VBS. Actually came and just helped out, just served with the kids. I mean,
Yeah.
people are meeting him for the first time and they're seeing, man, this guy's got a gift for working with children. But he was there to pray for me, to be my sounding board, to let me lose my temper with.
Okay.
You know, I feel bad because our children tend to bear the brunt. Our children and our spouses tend to bear the brunt of when things don't work out for us.
Yeah.
And in that situation, I'd been holding everything in all day, and my boys just kind of were going nuts at a restaurant, and I exploded.
Mm.
And he pulled me out, and he said, "Let's talk about this."
Mm.
And I would tell you this: get friends who are in the ministry side of things because they can relate to what you go through,
Mm-hmm.
but who aren't too impressed by you or your title that they won't kick you in the butt when you need it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That's
then at the same time,
Do they,
have those.
do you recommend them do you recommend a church member for that role, or does it need to be somebody outside your circle?
I would say this: it's nice to have the support within the body that you're serving,
Mm-hmm.
but for things like that, it always helps to have somebody who's removed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it, more than anything else, it's just that level of trust. My kids, my closest friends, my boys call them uncle and aunt for a reason. That level of trust is there. I can leave my kids with them in a sense, in an emergency situation. And so I know that anything that I share in a moment of anger, in a moment of pain, in a moment of grief, will be looked at through empathetic eyes, and with the understanding that this is my brother who just needs this, and it needs to stay right here.
Yeah.
I have, like I said, I have two men in my life that I go to with every kind of prayer situation. One is in ministry, one is a layman, but he leads FCA in his community. And I've had the honor of having him come up and teach my students for D-Nows, for special events, even small groups at camp. And those two guys I go to with everything. I think Wayne Cordiero said it in his book, Leading on Empty. You have to have a lightning rod. And the thing is, it can't be your wife, because part of what we do in ministry, especially in the situation where they serve with us, is we have to protect them.
Yeah.
And so I would tell you this, like, to answer your question, get somebody outside of your church. It's nice to have that local support, the guys that you can go to. I mean, we've been so blessed by the church that we serve at here. They've just been tremendous support, especially when everything happened with my dad. To walk in and find an envelope on my desk full of money just to pay for gas back and forth from San Antonio to here.
Yeah, such a blessing. Yeah.
But in those moments of rawness, in those moments of hurt, let's face it, we're men. There's going to be times where we need to say something that nobody else needs to hear.
Yeah.
And you can have those guys there, that distance, that separation, to allow you that, without fear of repercussion, without fear of getting back. And it's not even, that you're saying anything against somebody locally, but we never want to give off the impression that we can't handle that. Part of that's our pride, part of that's men, but I always tell everybody, you know, my bad day stops at my office door. My students, their parents, do I need to be real with them? Yes, but do they need to see me in those moments of weakness? No.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, that's good. I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's recognizing, you said all these things, but recognizing that God's sovereign, He's control of everything, and having that outside person that you can turn to, or people that you can turn to. And I love that, protecting your wife. That's good stuff, man.
I was going to add that, my father passed away in 17.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said we can't take the brunt of the mourning process and that time against our wives or whatever. And at the time I was dating my wife now, and I'm a victim of that. And there was one point where she left. I even texted Jeremy. I said, dude, I think we just broke up. And it's that mentality as a pastor, a youth pastor, that we can handle we have to keep these things inside, and that we can't let the church or the members know that, hey, we're fighting these battles. And the process of my dad dying the way he did, it haunted me for months. It was probably until I finally said, hey, I need help. And when I went and got help, it was 6-7 months of just I wasn't me. And and people noticed that, and that was me being prideful of not being like, hey, I need to stop and take care of myself. And my wife took the brunt of that. My friends took the brunt of that because I shut them out. And it's when you said that, I was like, man, that's like a deep thing that we have to remember as pastors. We are still people. We're not superheroes. We still need those people to reach out to. And that's something I learned then. And that's why when we went through the process of this thing with Amanda's mom, I mean, Jeremy was my first call. I was like, look, this is what's happening. And he's the one who said, hey, you might need to go to Georgetown. Like, and obviously I had made the process of saying, hey, yeah, I need to do that anyways. But he was just like the second hand of like, how do I handle this? Because it was a lot, and everything happened so fast with Amanda's mom. I just didn't know, like, it just, a calming head outside the situation was there to talk to me. And obviously it was during D Now, and we had Keith there. He also said the same thing. So as a team, they told me, hey, you need to take care of your wife. This will be, and God knew this was going to happen, and He had the team in place to take care of when I did leave.
Yeah.
And it worked out that way. But man, when you said we can't take it out on our wives, man, that really hit home, because I did. I was not. I wasn't. I was angry because of my dad died from cancer, and pancreatic cancer, and that is the worst thing you can watch someone basically shrivel up and go on, like pass on. And I took it out on her, and as like pastors, we just can't do that, or as people, we can't do that. So
yeah, definitely.
And it's, I'm not trying to plug the guy's book. It's just one that made a big impact on me. But in that same book I mentioned, Leading on Empty, that Wayne Cordiero book, he has a line in there. He says, if your ministry at home fails, you have no ministry at church.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's something that from the moment I sat through that session that we went through on that training over that book, it spoke to me, because I was guilty of that. Like, I'm one of those guys that I will either just bury myself in work,
Mm-hmm.
and then either push my wife away, or, like I said, somebody's going to end up bearing the brunt of it. And 9 out of 10 times, because they're the closest person in our lives, it's our spouses,
Mm-hmm.
or, God forbid, our children. And so that's been just something that stuck with me throughout this journey, that that lightning rod is so vital to the longevity that we have as ministers to the to our own sanity, really.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You've got to have that one person in your life that can be there, and can handle whatever you throw at them as far as just sheer emotion. I mentioned there's two men. The other guy's name is Felix Cervantes, and the way that he and I got to know each other is he got to witness that anger firsthand. And I stormed out of a worship session at camp because it was my wedding anniversary. My wife was not there. We were and we had gotten into a fight on the phone right at the start of this worship session. And I stormed out of the building and I kicked the door open. And wow. I'm 6'3", 255, 260.
That's a scary.
And I played soccer for 20 years. So I hit this door with a full force, and it missed another volunteer's nose by that much.
Wow.
Dude fell over backwards, and I just looked at him and I just mumbled sorry and kept on. And the camp director saw that, and I think he grabbed Felix because he was the only other guy there that was my size, and it was just like, you need to come with me. I'm bringing this big dude with me who is tatted up, and maybe he'll put some fear into this man. and they just sat with me, and through their 2 lifelong friendships, and just were bonded. And I think God was showing me in that time, like, this is a man I'm placing in your life who is going to be that for you.
Yeah.
You are going to be able to rely on him for everything. And he's that guy that will just randomly text you out of the blue on a Wednesday afternoon. Hey man, praying for you tonight. Yeah. Deliver the word and do it boldly. Yeah. And I mean, my kids call him Uncle Fifi. He and his wife and his son are just our family to us now. And it's all, again, just, he's maybe not from the ministry side of things, but he understands the need. And it's just, he's that guy that, one of his giftings is just empathy.
Yeah.
And he can sit there, and he's my size, and so it kind of looks like 2 big pillows coming together to form one giant pillow when we hug. But he's just that guy that no matter what, he will be there for you. And like I said, that I think that's something that whether it's ministry or just any position of leadership, you have to have.
Yeah.
But especially with ministry, going back to protecting our wives, we want them to love the church in the same way that we do, in the same way that we're called to.
Yeah.
And that requires protecting them a lot of times. They don't need to know all the gory details of how this deacon jumped your butt over something stupid, or this parent called and complained to their friend who is on the elder board of the church, and now you're having to answer for something that you didn't think amounted to much of anything. And so we protect them from that. And so we have those guys, again, being in ministry is an added plus, but I still think, having those guys who are separated enough, who are believers, who are grounded in that, but aren't impressed by what you do, aren't impressed by a title that you carry at the church.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good. Jeremy's my person, Keith, and we'll have him on later on. And he's from New Mexico, so he was like, can a New Mexican come on? And we're like, yeah. But Keith was good. He was real good last weekend during the whole situation. And when I was thinking about this, like I think it all depends on the situation we're in. Like, obviously the the passing of like your father or my father or mother-in-law, there's certain people you go to, and then there's like situational things like how do I deal with this situation in youth, like in your ministry. And I always give, I don't know if you ever heard Brian Hall. He's at what's that church in Austin?
Manchac
No,
Baptist Church?
no,
Woodlawn Baptist Church. He's at Woodlawn. Brian's been
South
there for
Austin.
about 35 years.
He's a guy that if I have a
Really?
youth, like a ministry question or situation, I remember this one situation I had where this girl, I follow all the students on Snapchat back then. I don't do Snapchat now, but just to kind of monitor what they do. And this is where I learned probably not do that right. But I was like, she had posted this picture. I was like, oh no, I can't see that. And I called Brian. I was like, Brian, what do I do? He's like, one, delete the app. You don't need to be monitoring students anyways. And then he just kind of walked through it. And I was like, you know what, Brian, you're a good dude. And so I think turning to somebody for a situational thing too is good to have.
Well, and that's the one thing I love about what you're doing with this podcast is networking is huge, especially in what we do. I've been very fortunate. Like I said, I mentioned when I was sharing my story a little bit about my buddy that's up here, and we met at a camp, and really how our friendship started was we grew from acquaintances to, again, being that for one another, where, we weren't like, he's not in that circle of where Michael or Felix is, but he called me, he goes, hey man, I'm going through something right now. And a mutual friend of ours gave me your name, say you'd just be a good person to listen to, and a good person to have listen to me, and just that you might be able to just give some advice, or if anything, just a shoulder and an ear. I said, okay, God gave me big shoulders and big ears for a reason. So let's go. And from there it grew. So then when God, fast forward 5 years later, 6 years later, when God puts us serving in the same town of 18,000 people, now we have that where we can bounce things off one another. And it's little things like, dude, there's a group of us that meet up here for coffee, and we've done some retreats together and some big things together. But like he'll send out a text this morning, hey man, praying for you guys. Hope everything goes well tonight. And it's nice to have that where we know, like, we're not poaching students from one another. If one of his kids comes over here to my church for an event, I say, hey man, I'm glad you're here, but next Wednesday, I need to see you back over there. Serve where you're planted, and so, but to have those guys, and like I said, camps are huge for that. So many of the guys that I go to for these professional help, these situational advice, are guys that I've met and done camp with for years. And there's you guys are down in the Austin area, so Matt Downing out at FBC Pflugerville. Love Matt to death, and he's a guy that I'll bounce stuff off of. Some of the guys up in the Dallas Metroplex, just guys that God has blessed my life and my ministry with, because I came into the game so late, and all my formal training. I don't know if I should be saying this out loud or not, but my schooling is Old Testament and New Testament because they were required at Hardin Simmons. And I'm proof that C's get degrees. So, but it's good. But he's put me in situations where I have some tremendous trees to sit under and learn from, and so I have that circle of guys for the situational stuff, and man, I've been so blessed with with guys who have been doing this, who are roughly the same age I am, but have been doing this, never ran from their calling and been doing it since they were 18, that have written books and probably have forgotten more than I'll ever learn about student ministry. And he's blessed my life with being able to develop friendships with them. And so I can go to them with like, hey, in your time at this mega church, did you ever have one of these come up? And he's like, yeah, like 25 times. Okay, great. Help a brother out. So, so it's great to have like you said, that personal connection, that inner circle. I always joke that Jesus set up the perfect model for ministry. He had his 12,
Mhm.
and then he had his 3, right? And those 3, that number was select for a reason. It's those guys that you let in, that you are transparent with, that are there with you for everything. And then you have the other guys that you're close with, that you do life with, but are they going to be the guys that you go to in a situation where, like you went through, or like I went through? No, probably not. Guys that you can bounce ideas off of, get some prayer from, turn to in situations like that. But having that close inner circle, I'm a firm believer that that inner circle needs to be small for a reason.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's the purpose of why we like.
Let me pause. Let me pause you real
take
quick.
my
Let me
son's.
pause you real quick.
Let me take my
Give me 1 sec, okay?
son's
Okay.
headphones
Give me
out.
1 sec.
that's why I'm glad I have an office at the church.
Yeah, his kids. I think we were doing the last week's podcast, and we had to cut it twice because his kids would just come in.
It's you've been married what, a year now?
September.
Okay, so yeah, we have 20 years coming up in July, and we did. We waited for a while. Like I said, my oldest son's about to turn 12. We got life out of the way and all the things that we wanted to do. And then had kids, and it's, each one is a blessing, but each one brings their own just like people do, their own baggage, their own issues. And we've got that one where he is single-minded focus on whatever he wants to do at that time. And so you can put a barricade across the door, you can put a sign over the window that says, "Don't come in here, I'm busy, I'm doing something."
Yeah.
He's going to walk in holding your sign going, "Hey, I need to talk to you for a minute."
Yeah. I have an office too, but we have our second wedding this weekend, so my wife is doing like crazy cleaning, and so I was like, I work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday,
Right.
and then I have Wednesdays and Sundays off. So Wednesdays are usually my office time, and then so she was like, "You need to do this," and I'm like, "But I got to do this at this time," and so I just kind of set up in the living room. So
that's ours. We homeschool our kids, and so like I'm that phone call, like she'll call me and go, "I'm calling your dad right now," and that's like the principal coming in. And so that's why I'm so grateful. Like even when I worked in corporate America, I worked from home, but I officed out of my van. I would park in the driveway and stay in my van and not work inside the house, because nobody else needs to hear my kids being my kids.
yeah. So
All right, I apologize.
okay.
Perfect storm.
Hey, I was telling him I got 3 at home, 16 months, 7 and 11, and they're homeschooled. So when I'm in the door, it's regardless of what's going on, Daddy's home, and so
no
I
doubt,
got you.
no doubt. So Jacob, if you'll kick off, right? And I loved your illustration. I mean, Jesus set the perfect model up for us, and it's 3, 2, and anyways, that's good stuff. Jacob, you want to kick us back off, and then we'll cut it right here.
Okay, so I think that's the purpose of why I was like, man, we got to do a podcast on the community of youth ministry, or just ministry in general. Is that I think we said it on our first episode. If you need someone to yell at, just yell at us. We're not gonna hold that against you, but don't be yelling at your senior pastor or a church member or things like that.
Or a deacon,
or the deacon, or
anybody,
the elder, your wife.
There you go.
Because I think we're in this game we say game, but we're in this ministry together, and and we have to work together. And just like you have guys that you've met at camp and that you go to for certain situations, we're hoping this podcast makes that situation
Absolutely.
to where we can, hey, I heard this guy on the podcast and he has big ears and big shoulders. I need something like that. Like, so, but, yeah, or I need a big guy that can, if I need to punch something, he can hold me down, like, and that, I think it's great that, that you're, you have this example of like just these people you met, and we're just sitting on our couch or living room or a kitchen recording a podcast, but we still are that still can be that ministry to if someone needs it. So,
and I love the name. Youth pastors are pastors too, but what I think people don't understand is like ministers need ministering to.
yeah.
And it's so just to be able to provide another resource for that was something like, so when you guys first put it out there, this is what we're doing. That's, I jumped on it because I was like, man, that's something that I've been very blessed with in my life, but I know there are people that are struggling, who feel like they're on an island, who feel isolated. They can't go to their staff, they can't go to the senior pastors, they don't really have anybody as far as that mentor tree to turn to. And so again, kudos to what you guys are doing. I'm grateful for it, and just pray huge blessings over this for you.
Thank you. And I don't know. You have something else? I was
just gonna say that we don't want people to be on an island. We just last week I saw on Facebook a youth minister took his life, and that's why we've been talking about this podcast for years, and we're like, we're gonna do it, we're gonna finally do. And then I think it's like the third pastor I've seen in the less than a year that taken their own life. It's like, man, this is our time to start this, and we have to, because we might not change someone's mind, but that avenue for someone to hear something that they might just need to hear is here. And that's the whole purpose of it, is that we don't want pastors, because we know that island can come fast. You can get stuck on that island real fast. And as a personal experience, like I've been on that island where do I go? How do I get off this island? Or who could join me on this island? Like, like,
definitely pulling people with you. Circle the negativity or whatever you want. I mean, we don't got time for all that, but I mean, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
And I think for years, mental health issues, now that they're kind of coming to the forefront of so much, we have the freedom, and I mean, for me, and I'll throw this out there, it's nothing I've ever hidden from my students, but I struggle with depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
In college, I went through a very, very nasty depression that nearly cost me everything. And I was very blessed at that time. Again, my life verse is Romans 8:18 and partnered with 8:28. It says, "For I tell you, our present sufferings are not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us." Partnered with all things work for the good of those who love God and are called to his purposes. And I've always been able to take that in the light of my depression and go, okay, man, what am I going through right now? This is temporary, right? Mm-hmm. God's got something for me. And that's where I learned, and I'll admit it, I unashamedly reach out and network. I mean, if we're at a big event, we just came back from Empower last month, and my staff always laughs. They're like, is there anybody you don't know? And I was like, well, it's just being able to just go up and say, hey, man, I heard you speak at this, or I read this in your book, and I appreciate it. It spoke to me. And just being able to say thank you and make that connection so that the next time you see them, you shake that hand and it becomes a little more familiar, but you also have that opportunity to reach out and hey, in your book, you talked about this. Can you give me a little more insight on how you handle that situation? And I will tell you, especially coming from a place of struggling with depression, struggling with feeling alone, God showed me so much through that time, especially with the men that he had reach out to me and speak into my life, that he put us as a body of believers. And I mean, and he used that analogy all throughout scripture. Each one of us brings something different that makes us all work together.
Yeah.
You know, my eye and my hand have to work together. They may not be related. And in my case, because I'm so freakishly disproportioned, they're about 4 feet apart, but they work together. And so if I have an opportunity to meet somebody that can help me, but more importantly, I feel that might be able, that I can help, then by all means, reach out. You know, it's one of those things that we've got to, we're going to make more of an impact on this world. We're going to do more for the kingdom if we realize that we don't have to fight it alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Satan knows
good.
the outcome. He's read the book.
Mm-hmm.
He knows he loses. So right now, his plan is to turn as many Christians into kamikazes as possible.
Yeah.
Right? Use them to take down others, to take down the name of Jesus. And so the more that we're able to build one another up, the more that we're able to tag team, and the more that we're able to help one another, the better off that this world is going to be. You know, I always tell everybody, God doesn't need us, but he gave us the opportunity for it to be used by him. We need to make the most of it. So.
Yeah. Amen. Well, man, I don't think we could have had a first guest that knocked it out of the park like you did, Johnny. Thank you so much for for reaching out, and B, just taking the time to share with us your story, and man, so many wisdoms of nuggets there. Can we share your contact info with on the?
Yeah.
Do you want to share your?
No, I mean,
especially. Now, so.
Yeah, it was. I mean, especially on Facebook with that Texas Youth Pastors page, man. That's huge. Special shout out to Sam Powers for putting that together. But yeah, you can reach me on Facebook, Johnny Johnny Knowlton Knowlton. Same thing on Instagram. I'm not much of a big social media guy. Like if you don't like pictures of fishing or of my kids or my wife, or things I cook, probably stay away from my Instagram, but you can reach out to me that way. But you can email me too, man. It's all lowercase, all one word, JohnnyKnowlton @gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And again, man, just thank you guys so much for what you're doing with this. It was something that spoke straight to me when I saw you guys put it out there, because I've been there. I've needed that help, and God has been faithful in providing that. And so I want to pay it forward. God bless you and this ministry, because that's what it is that you're doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Before we wrap this up, we're going to ask these two questions every time.
All right.
What is the craziest story you've been part of or you've seen in ministry? And then the second one would be, what's the last song you've listened to on purpose?
Okay. So, without destroying any and all credibility.
That's usually how the stories go.
Well, because again, I always tell everybody there's a big portion of my life where I was running from my calling to student ministry, and that started in high school. So there's a lot of stuff I probably can't share, and I have friends who I grew up with that are probably grateful I won't. But the funniest one, and I can tell this because this young lady is near and dear to me and my wife. She sends us Happy Mother's Day and Father's Day stuff every year. I had the honor of officiating her wedding back in August. Mm-hmm. So we had a wrap up of, she was on my student leadership team. We had done a big outreach event that night, back to school bash. We had inflatables. We had a huge, like 3-story inflatable water slide, and we had bounce houses, and we get done wrapping everything up, and we have got them cinched down, tied up, back in the bags, ready to load into the trailer. And she goes, guys, I can't find my phone. And I go, okay, Hallie, we searched for an hour looking for the phone. And I go, I'm going to call your phone. I want each of you to lay down on one of these inflatables. Sure enough, somebody's laying down on the one that we had just cinched up, and we can hear from the middle of the bounce house that we had just wrapped up and got shut down. And so we had to dig that out. And that just shows, but the great thing about that was in that extra time that we spent together, she was on my leadership team, but she had a friend there that was kind of new and visiting, and automatically bond right there. So even those crazy situations, God's giving you an opportunity and a door to open.
That's fine.
Amen. Amen.
Man, the second question, the last song that I intentionally listened to, and this is going to go back to my redneck roots. I was on vacation. I was doing a wedding or a funeral last week back in East Texas, but I had a chance to get some fishing time in and headed out to the pond. I intentionally listened to Red Dirt Road by Josh Abbott and Wade Bowen. I'm sorry, Josh Abbott and Randy Rogers, I think. Anyways, everything I ever learned was at the end of a dirt road. Yeah. That is my go-to song when I'm going hunting with my son or taking my boys fishing. And so the actual last intentionally put on for a purpose of fixing my mood. I'm sorry it can't be deep theological.
No.
Other than the philosophy of all the good things in life are found at the end of a dirt road.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
well, we appreciate you jumping on, being our first guest, and
yes, we do.
I appreciate the words, the encouraging words of starting this, because it's hard to. I mean, we're only on third episode, so it's like, man, are we really making a difference and stuff? So, again, thank you.
Yes.
Bless your ministry up there in North Texas. I know it's cold and windy and flat.
It's actually snowing outside right now.
Oh, it's 80 degrees down here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's hard to believe we're in the same state. It's actually snowing right now.
And we have some severe thunderstorms coming this afternoon. So, hey, I'm going to add you on my Facebook and all that stuff. So we can
absolutely
contact, and
absolutely
we'll definitely have you back again.
Oh yeah.
I have a different.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. God bless you.
Well, that was cool. I mean, our first guest, Johnny Knowlton, really brought it this week, and that, and you couldn't have a better guest on for your first ever. So, everything's a learning curve. Having a guest on, the technology behind everything, it was. I mean, it couldn't have gone any better, and it was exciting. I think we kind of have the same, I would say the same journey to ministry, because I did, I went to ministry after I finished school, but then I left and went to the welding world, and ran from that just like he did. Not as long, but finally made my way back into ministry, and it's cool to hear that I wasn't the only one, and I mean, he just has a cool story, and it's super insightful on the topic that we had this week. So
it
was cool. Wait till the next. Oh, go ahead.
No. I mean, you go. What were you gonna say? Okay, wait till the next what?
I can't wait till the next guest we have, and that's undecided. So, and the topic's undecided, but it's the. And we talked about this towards the end, is the community between not just youth ministers, but people in ministry all together. And it's exactly what I was thinking and how it would go. And it worked out perfect.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, he really encouraged us too, as we keep pressing on, as we keep trying to figure out and keep trying to work our schedules and to keep ministering to pastors. I just got off the phone with somebody a while ago, and I said to them, I said, I think one of my pastor's heart, gifts is to pastors. And I said, I said what we said earlier. If you want to call and yell at me, call and yell at me. And he was like, okay, man. And he's an older pastor. He's been in the ministry for years, but it doesn't matter. We still need somebody to lean into.
Yeah. So again, Johnny, thank you for joining us and bearing with us as we figured things out. And I can't believe it's snowing where he's at. So if I look out my window and the skies are black, ready to like thunderstorms and stuff, and he said it's snowing and it's 80 degrees down here. So,
and we're in the same state.
Yeah. So, I think this week, well, let me just say this first. If you are struggling with something, or you need someone to yell at, or you want to be on the show, or just need someone to reach out to talk,
network.
Youth pastors or pastors2@gmail.com. And don't be afraid to reach out to us. I mean, you can yell at us, or you can ask questions about what a certain situation, and if we don't know the answers, we'll go find it.
That's right.
Everything's anonymous, so if you just need to vent about your preacher or the head deacon at your church, and we're not going to go back and call them and say, hey, this is what your guy said about you. So, but we just want to be there for you, just like we talked about. We want to be that source to help through the ministry, no matter what ministry you're doing, whether it's lights or sounds or youth ministry or college ministry or children's ministry, any of that. So did you have anything to add before we wrap this up?
No, if I was to say one more thing, can I say one more thing?
Yeah. I mean,
if I was, this is our podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's yours. Ours, not yours. But
it's not mine. It's all ours. It's ours.
Yeah.
If I were to say one more thing, I would only say that the sooner you learn that you do need that somebody, the better. Yeah. And the sooner you learn that, yes, this church member, while they're awesome, you can't tell them and say the same things that you might be able to say to that person that's outside that circle.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The sooner you learn it, the better.
Yeah.
So
cool. Well, I think we talked about this earlier. We asked Johnny his two questions.
Yeah.
And we were going to do the same thing, but I think if you and I were to give the crazy stories of ministry, we would eventually run out of stories.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So from now on, we're just going to give you the last song that we've listened to.
And we're gonna hear the guests' crazy stories.
Yes, we're gonna hear the guest stories, but not ours, because we don't want to run out of content, because we're in it for the long haul, not for the next 2 weeks. Because
not just episode 10. We want to go to 57 and more.
Yeah, 100 plus. We want that crime junkie status.
There you go. Then Jacob, what song did you intentionally look up this week?
Well, last night we were planning for our wedding this Saturday, wedding 2.0, and because of things with Amanda's mom, we were going to change how me and my mom walked in, and so I probably listened to 30 different songs for me and my mom to walk into.
Yeah.
But it was decided that we're just gonna stick to the same song, and that was "You Should Be Here" by who is that guy? Man, Cole Swindell. "You Should Be Here," Cole Swindell.
Yes, that's a good one.
We're not playing the video like we did in September, but still playing the song. So, what was the last song you listened to?
The last song that I intentionally looked up was Shane and Shane, Psalm 34, and if you didn't know, Jacob is a Shane and Shane junkie. And
It's true. So Shane, if you somehow hear this, we would love to have you on and maybe go out to Whataburger.
definitely we'll buy. We'll buy the burgers.
I'll pay for it.
There you go. So I just in some conversations that came up between Jacob and I, obviously off the show, I was like, man, I want to listen to that song, and I played it and just filled up the room with the song. And just what they've done is they've taken that song, they've put it to music, and they sing it, and it's just scripture.
Yeah.
God is speaking it through that song, and it is amazing. It's beautiful too. So
Oh yeah. I'd probably listen. They have the Psalms Live album.
yeah.
I'd probably listen to that thing at least 8 times in a week.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, good stuff.
So, yeah. So.
Well, do you want to do this again next week?
Oh yeah.
All right, let's do it.